A new survey is revealing shocking levels of anti-Semitism amongst Christians in the Republic of Ireland. Well, one of the researchers said of the disturbing findings, quote, "It's like we're living in medieval times." Well, Jamie O'Mahony, an Israel activist from Dublin, Ireland, joins us now. Jamie, thanks for coming on, buddy. Well, Jamie, let me read you a couple of the statistics from this finding. It says the study found about 1/3 of Irish Christians believe Jewish people, quote, still talk too much about what happened to them in the Holocaust. And only 11.3% of Irish Christians support Israel in its conflict with Palestinians, compared to the 42.3% of Americans. So, Jamie, do these statistics shock you?
Unfortunately, no. So Ireland has a history of being, I think, by far and away the most anti-Israel country in Europe. And that dates, of course, since the modern founding of the nation state of Israel in 1948. Ireland didn't recognize that country until 1963. We had our prime minister during the Second World War sign a book of condolences for Adolf Hitler in the German embassy. And in 1904, which in the city where I'm originally from, Limerick City, we had the Catholic priest of that city basically launch a pogrom against the Jewish families living within Limerick at that time, claiming that Jews were essentially leeches within Limerick, and they needed to be routed out of the city. And unfortunately, he was received with wide acclaim and praise at the time. So this is obviously back, we're talking 100 years ago, and during the Second World War, 80 years ago. But essentially, since, not even since October 7th, but over the last few decades, Ireland has basically perpetuated a highly hostile policy to Israel. And since October 7th, that has merely intensified. Unfortunately, those stats are not surprising. I am a part of a group called the Ireland-Israel Alliance, which is essentially a group made up of both Christians and Jews living within Ireland. But sadly, the narrative that we see all over the country, in our local towns, in our cities, across all the 10 political parties within our parliament, it's just basically one-way traffic against the Jewish state. So, look, we're trying to change things on the ground, but it's unfortunately an uphill struggle at the moment.
How have you noticed things change, I suppose, since October 7th?
So a group in particular called the IPSC, the Ireland Palestine Solidarity Campaign, have really upped their activity. They hold meetings about once a week across a lot of towns and cities across Ireland. A big thing, unfortunately, has been across the Parliament of Ireland. You've had all the political parties from the far left to, there isn't really a far right in Ireland, but from the far left to centrists, we've seen a broad acceptance of the sort of BDS narratives towards Israel, a huge lack of balance. Anything remotely Israel related is seen in a sort of dark or ominous light, unfortunately. This goes back to even a couple of years ago during COVID. A friend of mine was working as a parliamentary assistant. And for example, even Israel's approach towards COVID, which was one of the best in the world, regards vaccination rates, that was sort of pushed to the side. And for example, when the Department of Health wanted to look at how they could adopt these approaches domestically, that was pushed to the side because it was an Israeli approach, and thus it was bad. And Israel has unfortunately become a dirty word in this regard. And there's no real mainstream figure that is seen to be a Zionist advocate. Now, obviously, we're trying to change that ourselves. But for the moment, it's been very, very negative. We have blood libels that are, frankly, medieval, being spoken within our Senate. And it really speaks a lot to the fact that the Israeli embassy last December pulled out and said it's simply not worth having an embassy here anymore. And that's very telling when we're one of the only European countries that discussed expelling the Israeli ambassador, and ultimately Gideon Sar, the Israeli foreign minister, felt he had to pull out the embassy from Dublin.
When you look at the United States and you think about, standing with Israel and the Jewish people, it's a daunting task, but there are tens of millions of people behind you, I guess you could say. When you're one of a few, what is it like for you when you're being vocal on campus in Ireland, standing with Israel and the Jewish people?
Yeah, so I guess it's pretty hard. A group that I became involved in over the last few months, I'm very grateful for their presence in the United States, and also we're now an international movement. We're in 7 other countries. Students Supporting Israel, a group founded 13 years ago by Ilan Sanelnikov, an Israeli American. And I have brought this group to Ireland. We were the first, I'm very proud to say, our first Zionist student grouping on a campus in Ireland. But we received an enormous amount of hate and negativity from everyone, from the students to the administration of the university. Yeah, just a real lot of backlash. So it's quite tough, to be honest, and especially when you try and look around. I mean, in America, I'm quite envious sometimes. You have mainstream kind of promotion of Zionism and an acceptance of the fundamental good and the efforts of the Jewish state to defend itself, in what I would see as part of a kind of a Western, in many ways, a defense of Western civilization against jihadism, against a way of the world that is a view of the world that is very backwards. So I'm very thankful to see that in America, with the power that America has. But unfortunately, in Ireland, you simply don't really see that anywhere. And it's tough to see, for example, when your own parliament is doing things like recognizing a phantom state of Palestine that has no recognized borders, no recognized government, no recognized capital, and doing things like joining South Africa's genocide case in the International Court of Justice, or opening an embassy in Tehran, of course, the capital of Iran, one of the chief adversaries of our free way of life. And we have Irish parliamentarians going to a Houthi conference in Yemen only 2 weeks ago. And on the wall, there's literally a slogan saying, "Death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews." In Ireland, we've all these things kind of stacking up against us. And one of the most prominent things, and thankfully the new American administration has kind of managed to push the Irish government away from this initiative. A new bill that was brought before the Parliament a couple of years ago, but it's gaining more and more kind of media momentum at the moment, is something called the Occupied Territories Bill. Now, what this would do is essentially criminalize anyone buying or trading in goods and services coming from Judea and Samaria, or the so-called West Bank. So this includes many Christian areas. So this would criminalize any Jewish economic activity within Judea and Samaria. So this is an unprecedented legal bill. And thankfully it has been basically shelved by the Irish government, but it's still on the cards to be passed. And so I'm hoping for a bit of American backing.
Jamie, first off, I just think you are an incredibly brave person. But I also think it is kind of worth noting that it is becoming quote unquote illegal to have Jewish businesses in Judea, which is just wild. But last question, my brother. Let's say, because here's the thing, I noticed a lot of people that would push back against you, would vehemently disagree with you, honestly don't want to hear what you have to say. So let's say by some chance there is someone who just hates everything that you stand for and believes in, and they're Irish, but they're watching this video. And for some reason, they're actually listening this time. What's one thing? We can't go down the myriad of things that we could discuss. What's one thing that you would hope my friend here would at least start to think about?
I guess I really hope they can understand the fight that Israel is up against. They are up against a jihadist, Iranian-backed worldview that would see us as infidels and have our worldview as basically a lesser form of life. Unfortunately, we're seeing a mass kind of left wing embracing of this ideology because they happen to hate our way of life. And they're becoming emboldened to do so more and more, unfortunately, by a lack of clamping down on their actions, whether it be protests on the street or on campuses, etc. So I want everyone to kind of appreciate, for me personally, I've always seen Zionism as a very understandable and welcome nationalist movement. Herzl, the writings of Herzl and Jabotinsky, etc. We see a constant rejection of peace. Liberals in particular are deluded by this idea in the West of a two-state solution, when it has become clear time and time again, ever since 1937, from up until 2008 and 2020 with Trump's peace plan, a constant Palestinian rejectionism of two-state solutions, of viable, credible peace plans that would basically create an Arab independent Palestinian state alongside an independent Jewish state, and it is constantly rejected. And it is simply for the reason of they don't want an independent Palestinian state, they want a state instead of the Jewish state, and they want it replaced. And that is ultimately what the slogan "From the River to the Sea" really means.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, I so appreciate your time. I know it's late in Europe, so man, I'm just I want you to be encouraged that there are a lot of people watching you right now that are praying for you to continue to be strong and to not stay silent. So, Jamie, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.